And that's what's been going on ever since. Next slide. Let's dispel another myth. The myth supposedly of occupation. Israel is the occupier. Here's the statement I hear a lot. Israel and the Jews are occupying land that actually belongs to the Palestinians. And Hamas, they're not a terrorist group. They're freedom fighters. We should honor them because they're just trying to get the land back that belongs to them. Yes, while Jewish people did live there first, okay, we can't dispute that. The Jews were there first, but after the Second Temple in Jerusalem was destroyed, here's the myth, everybody. After the Second Temple in Jerusalem was destroyed in the year 70, basically the Jews fled Israel. They were gone, and for 1,800 years, they were pretty much gone, so other people had to fill the vacuum and take over the land. But now, 1,800 years later, Israel basically comes back demanding their country back. No, it doesn't work that way. So there's this argument, if you will, this is the big crux of the matter, that it's about occupation. In fact, under this, you'll see this. This is an ambassador to the UN from Russia, and he says, Israel, get a load of this, has no right to defend itself. Okay, hold on. Time out. Let me take this again. So you're basically living in peace. You're on a kibbutz. Innocent people, one morning, Hamas comes in, slaughters innocent people who have nothing to do with the military. Israel wants to defend itself from further attack, and the Russian ambassador to the UN says, no, Israel, you need to stop. You don't have any right to defend yourself. Well, when does Israel have the right then to defend itself? He's saying Israel doesn't have the right because they're occupying. Israel, you're occupying their land. I mean, what do you expect to happen? Let's throw in some facts here. Let's go on to our next slide. First of all, biblically, the land belongs to Israel. Not because I say so, guys, because God does. Look, as Christians, do we stand by the Bible or not? Yes or no? Thank you. So let me tell you what the Bible says. In Genesis 15:18, it says, so on that day, the Lord made an agreement or a covenant with Abram. He said, Abram, I will give to your descendants, that's through Isaac, not through Ishmael. Trust me, Ishmael's okay. On the Arab side, they got 22 nations that God gave them, and all those nations got a whole lot of oil. Ishmael isn't hurting. But through Isaac, God said, look, I'll give to your descendants through Isaac the land between, let's see where it is. What are the east-west borders? Well, in the west, you got the river of Egypt. That's the Nile River. So this land goes from the Nile River of Egypt in the west to the great Euphrates River in Iraq in the east. That's a lot of land. But that's only east-west. What about the rest of the borders? Well, in Numbers chapter 34, God gives you the rest of the borders of Israel so that you can connect the dots. And up here, the map that you're looking at up here, see the black outline around it? That's a combination of Genesis 15:18 and Numbers 34. Those are the borders of what God said Israel is supposed to be. So let me tell you who's in those borders. Well, amazingly, thank the Lord, Israel is in those borders. That's a good thing. Here's the weird thing, though. Let me tell you who else is in those borders right now. See, we've got part of southern central Turkey. We've got about half of Syria. You got all of Jordan. You got about half of Iraq, northwest corner of Kuwait, a big northwestern chunk of Saudi Arabia, all of Lebanon, and part of Egypt. Just a tiny, tiny little bit of Israel. So let me clarify something. Is there occupation going on? Yes, there is. From the other team. God said all of that is supposed to be Israel. Israel is only within 1/10 of that land. The other 9/10 of that land is being occupied by the other guys. And they're the ones who need to get out. Let's go on to our next slide. Now, biblically, we got it. What about geopolitically? How do we answer people who say, you guys are occupying? Because listen, if somebody who follows the Quran basically says, you're the occupier, and you respond by saying, well, it says in my Bible, my holy book, we're not, so I got you. No, you don't, because they don't believe in your holy book. So let's argue this or defend this geopolitically. The Jews have maintained ties to their homeland for more than 3,700 years. Newsflash, everybody. After the Second Temple was destroyed in the year 70, did some Jews leave? Yeah, but a whole lot of us stayed. Even after the destruction of the Second Temple and the beginning of the exile, Jewish life in Israel flourished. Large communities were reestablished in Jerusalem and Tiberias by the 9th century. In the 11th century, Jewish communities grew in towns and places like Rafah, Gaza, Ashkelon, Jaffa, and Caesarea. Next slide. Now, the comments that I'm about to share with you come from Arab leaders. And I'll just give you the comments. This first one is from Arab historian Philip Hitti, who says, there is no such thing as Palestine in history. Absolutely not. The next one is from a man by the name of Awuni Bey Abdul Hadi, a Palestinian politician. There's no such country as Palestine. Palestine is a term the Zionists, the Jews, invented. There is no Palestine in the Bible. Our country was for centuries part of Syria. And this last one from Ahmed Shukeri, the first chairman of the Palestine Liberation Organization. That's another wonderful terrorist group, who said it's common knowledge that Palestine is nothing but southern Syria. Isn't it amazing that these Palestinians are saying that Israel belongs to us? It is actually Palestine, and yet their own team is saying, no, it's not. That's wrong. Shocking? You ain't seen nothing yet. Let's take a look at the next slide. Let me tell you a little bit about this guy. This gentleman is named Zahir Hussein. He was a committee member of the Palestine Liberation Organization in the 1960s and 70s, the terrorist group. In 1977, he conducted an interview with a Dutch newspaper in Dutch called Trouw, or the Sentinel. And the reporter there asked him a very poignant question. They said, Mr. Hussein, we don't get this. You guys are calling yourselves Palestinians, but before 1967, we never heard of the term before. You guys are saying you're the original owners of the land and you're the original settlers, but we didn't hear anything called Palestine or Palestinians. You say you're from old. Why didn't we hear that term from old? It sounds like you just invented it. And he basically said, guess what? You're right. We invented it. Here's the answer he gave. He said, look, the Palestinian people doesn't exist. Guys, the Palestinians are saying they don't exist. Do you understand? The creation of a Palestinian state is only a means for continuing our struggle against the state of Israel, to wipe Israel off the face of the earth. That's why we invented the term. Only for political and tactical reasons do we speak today about the existence of a Palestinian people. They have admitted to you openly. This has been on the record. 1977 was what, 46 years ago or whatever it is? They've openly admitted, guys, there's no such thing as Palestinians. We made this whole thing up. It's a ruse. Don't be stupid enough to believe us. And what is the world doing? Next slide. The other part here that I want to talk with you about, and another reason why the Palestinians say that it's their land, is because when Israel became a state in 1948, Palestinians, or let's just call them Arabs, because many Palestinians are actually originally from Jordan and Egypt, Jordanians and Egyptians. But in 1948, when Israel became a state, Arabs and Jews were living together in Israel. Many of them as friends, relatives. They would invite one another over to families for dinner. There was peace, two different groups of people, peaceful, loving on one another. That's the way that it should be. But when Israel became a state, what happened was many of those Arabs left Israel and became refugees. There were two different arguments given. The argument given from the Palestinian side is that, well, we were living there in peace, but one day the Jews in Israel basically said, we decided we're tired of you, we don't like you anymore, get out, and so we're kicking you out. That's their explanation. The other explanation, however, is that, well, we didn't tell the Palestinians or the Arabs to get out. Their own Arab governments told them. Two diametrically opposed explanations. Who to believe? Well, why don't we actually hear the voices from their team who confirm what really happened? Here's one of them. Back during that day, the prime minister of Syria was a man by the name of Khalid al-Azam. He died around 1965 or so. And in his memoirs, which were published in 1973 posthumously, here's what he wrote about this whole deal. He said, look, the refugee problem was caused by Israel telling them, get out, we're kicking you out. No! The call by the Arab governments to the inhabitants of Palestine to evacuate and leave for the bordering countries. We, the Arabs, brought destruction upon 1 million Arab refugees by calling on them and pleading with them to get out. Their own side admits they did it, yet Israel gets the blame. Not good enough for you? Here's another one. Check this next slide. You're looking at a copy of a magazine, a Jordanian newspaper called Al-Difa from 1954. Al-Difa did an interview with a Palestinian refugee who basically said, come on, tell us the truth, how you ended up here. Israel kicked you out, yeah? And they said, no, here's what happened. The Arab government told us, get out so that we can get in and wipe out Israel. So we got out, but they didn't get in. Now you know the truth. Guys, I'm not making this up. This is their team. But this is the stuff that they don't want to talk about. But I will. Next slide. Oh, I love this one. Here's why it's not about occupation, and it never was. It's about killing the Jews. Sheikh Hassan Nasrallah is the leader of the terrorist group Hezbollah in southern Lebanon. He came out, by the way, everybody was looking to see what he would say on Friday, because late last week they said he's going to be coming out with a special statement. And that special statement was basically something that he said over and over and over. Listen to this. Kill the Jews wherever you find them. This is how you know that it's about wiping Jewish people off the face of the earth and not about occupation. You know why? Because if the idea is to kill the Jews wherever they happen to be, let's say somebody kills the Jews, I don't know, here in Connecticut. Guys, Connecticut in the United States, we couldn't occupy that land if we wanted to. We're 6,000 miles away. Y'all following me on this? Let's go on. If this were about occupation, there we go. Why murder people in other countries that are far away from Israel and couldn't occupy Gaza if they wanted to? This has nothing to do with occupation. It has everything to do with the true goal. Kill the Jews, but use the ruse of occupation to gain sympathy from the world. They're occupying us, this bigger, stronger power, and we are the underdogs. We don't have anything. And the world falls for it every time. Next slide. Here's another myth. Dispelling the myth, the idea of apartheid. Israel is an apartheid nation. We keep hearing this over and over and over, but my goodness, I'm not here so much to talk about Rashida Tlaib. That'll be another message. What is apartheid? They keep accusing Israel of apartheid. Do you ever hear them giving you a definition of what it actually is? Why don't we show you, and then we'll see if Israel's doing it. On to our next slide. Apartheid is known as a policy or a system of segregation or discrimination of a people on the grounds of their race, color, creed, or culture. So the claim is Israel is discriminating against those Palestinians, unfairly treating those Palestinians, putting walls up and checkpoints up to keep them out in an open-air prison. Next slide. Rashida Tlaib, I guess we're going to talk about her a little bit. Here's what she said recently. As long as our country provides billions in unconditional funding to support the apartheid government, because she can't say the word Israel, she's got to say apartheid government, this heartbreaking cycle of violence will continue. So obviously she believes that Israel is committing apartheid. That's not so shocking anymore, knowing that she's a Palestinian congresswoman. You know what is shocking? You know who else believes that Israel is committing apartheid? Oh, you'll never believe this. Maybe you will. Check out who was on this next slide. Let me tell you about this guy. His name is Cyril Ramaphosa. He is the president of South Africa. Here's what he says. Palestinians have been under occupation for 75 years, and Israel is a government that's been dubbed an apartheid state. We've always pledged our solidarity with the Palestinians, and the only solution for the problems between Israel and Palestine is a two-state solution. This is a guy who's accusing Israel of apartheid. This is like the pot calling the proverbial kettle black. If there's any world leader of any country who should know what apartheid is, it's the president of South Africa. So, is Israel discriminating against Palestinians because they're Arab or Palestinian? Here are the facts that nobody wants to tell you. But it's about time you got them, because the next time somebody comes up to you and says Israel's committing apartheid, how about we have an answer for them? Would you like to? Here it is. Next slide. Fact number one. 1 out of every 5 people who are citizens of the nation of Israel are considered Arab, Muslim, Palestinian. 20% of the population. And those Palestinian or Arab citizens enjoy the exact same rights and privileges that Jewish citizens do. They've got freedom of the press. They've got freedom of the assembly. They serve in government positions. In fact, one of Israel's Supreme Court justices is a Palestinian. Fact number 3, in Israel's Knesset, or Israel's government, or Israel's Congress of 120 members, 10 of them are Arab, Muslim, Palestinian. Fact number 4, a Harvard study was done some years ago, and what they did was they asked Palestinians living in Israel, they said, so tell me, if you had the opportunity, would you live somewhere else? And 80%, 4 out of 5 of the Palestinians they surveyed said, are you kidding? We'd rather live here in Israel than in our own Arab countries. We love it here. If we go back to our Arab countries, forget about it. They'd never treat us as well as Israel does. Another organization known as the Palestinian Center for Public Opinion basically said, yeah, we don't think that's right. Yeah, we think Harvard, was kind of partial because we're in the United States. The U.S. favors Israel. So we're going to do our own study, and we're going to get the real results. And they did their own study, and they ended up with egg on their face. Because when they did the study, their own poll, the other team, found that more than half the Palestinians living in Israel said the same thing they said for the Harvard study. We want to be citizens of Israel. We'd rather be citizens of Israel than citizens in our own Arab countries. All of this begs the following question regarding apartheid. If all of these folks were truly being discriminated against, as the AOCs and the Cyril Ramaphosa's and the Rashida Tlaib would love you to believe it, then why would they want to stay? Would any of you? I didn't think so. Next slide. Of course, in the midst of all of this, here's what's going on, and this is really sad. And this is the Generation Z group you see out protesting on the streets. An organization called FaithWire did a study, and it says support for Israel takes a nosedive among young Christian evangelicals. The University of North Carolina survey found 33% of young evangelical Christians age 8 to 29 said that they support Israel in the Palestinian conflict. So, 1 out of 3 young evangelical Christians from ages 8 to 29 support Israel. 1 out of 3. You're saying, well, okay, 1 out of 3, that's not bad. Are you kidding? It used to be 2 out of 3, because only 3 years ago, more than 69% of that same group supported Israel. Why the reason for the drop? What's going on? Our next slide explains. There's something going on called liberation theology. And liberation theology essentially is the belief that since Jesus came to be the emancipator of the poor and oppressed, and since you're being told in the media and by Hamas and all of these other Arab news agencies that the Palestinians are the ones who are poor and oppressed, well, if Jesus came for them and he was on their side, you got to be on their side too. Listen. Yes, we're on the side of the poor and oppressed. Now, let me just state this right here, right now. I grieve over innocent casualties on both sides, as I know you should, and that's the right thing to do. It hurts me just as much to see footage of a Palestinian child lifeless as it does to see an Israeli child lifeless. But at the same time, guys, yes, those are the poor and oppressed. Not the Hamas terrorist group that has a lot of money, that takes a lot of money that's supposed to go to those poor and oppressed, and uses it for themselves to build tunnels and to house themselves in 5-star restaurants and hotels in Qatar while all of this nonsense is going on in the Gaza Strip and they're nowhere near it. Guys, I'm just giving you facts you need to know. Next slide. Dispelling the myth, the border wall. Part of the reason people are accusing Israel of apartheid, it's like, you've got a wall up and fences. You're keeping these Palestinians out. They can't get in. It's an open-air prison. You're discriminating against them. That's a big reason you're hearing apartheid. In fact, some years ago, I had an email conversation with a pastor of a church in Brandon, Manitoba, Canada. We were talking by email. I don't know how the two of us got connected. And he said, Jack, tell me a little bit about yourself. I said, well, I'm a Jewish believer in Christ. He said, that's awesome. He said, tell me something else about yourself. And I said, well, I believe that just like the Bible says, we have a responsibility, Pastor, to bless Israel. And he said, yeah, that's where I lose you. I said, wait, what? You don't think we should bless Israel? He said, no, but I said, Genesis 12:3. He said, I don't care. He said, I don't like what Israel is doing today. And I said, okay, so why don't we have a little email conversation and talk about this? And we did. And it had to do with the border wall and the fence. And I saved part of that email conversation because I want you to see the exact transcript. So here it is. It's from Pastor Brian McNary. He said, the problem I have with Israel is the checkpoints and the walls that Israel built. They prevent the movement of Palestinians in and out of the country, and that's why those Palestinians are living in an open-air prison. It's terrible what Israel is doing to them. And here was my response. I said, Pastor, you say the Palestinians can't get in. They're in an open-air prison, and yet every single day, 50,000 Palestinians from outside Israel get in. And at the end of the day, they go back out. And if they want to come back in the next day, they do that. And they can freely go back in and out through those walls and through those checkpoints anytime they want to. I say if Israel built these to keep Palestinians out and 350,000 of them are getting in every week, I think Israel is probably saying, boy, we screwed up. I said, but Pastor, why build walls to keep Palestinians out if you're just freely allowing them in? Here's why we built the walls, Pastor. Before we built the walls and the fences, since there was no border over there, terrorists would come in and shoot up innocent Israelis living in Israel and also innocent Palestinians living in Israel. We said, we got to do something. We keep getting killed. I said, Pastor, since those walls have been put up, we got the best of both worlds. We can allow in the Palestinians who are the good guys and keep the bad guys out. I said, but you got a problem with those walls and checkpoints. So, Pastor, what are you suggesting? Are you suggesting that we should then take down the walls and the fences, and that way we can allow the bad guys to come back in and start once again killing innocent Israelis and innocent Palestinians, 20% of the population that their team is going to die to? Is that what you want? I never heard from them again. But guys, you need to know this because nobody's telling you. Next slide. And of course, the result of Israel defending herself and all these facts I'm giving you, the day after, my God, the day after, this happened on October 7th, Saturday. On Sunday, October 8th, there they were out on the streets. There's your Generation Z, many of them college students, who you would think get a better education, but look, pay $60,000, $65,000 a year to go to an Ivy League school. Listen to liberal professors and just get all the information you really need on TikTok because those people really know what they're teaching. I'm just being honest. So this just blew my mind away. I said, my gosh, this is the ultimate in hypocrisy. Because the day after the attack on Sunday, these folks are right around the area of Times Square in New York City, holding a pro-Palestinian protest. The guy up front over here, he's dressed like a Hamas soldier because he reveres him, and he's even got on his shirt a print of Hamas soldiers. And I'm thinking, oh my God, do you have any idea what you're doing? Probably not, because when 9/11 happened, there's a good chance that maybe you weren't even born. But on 9/11, see, here's what happened. People who had this ideology to kill the little Satan, Israel, and to kill the great Satan, the United States, wiped out 3,000 of our people like that in a second. You as an American are out there glorifying today the same people with the same ideology who slaughtered us on 9/11. Are you not thinking at all? I guess not. Next slide. And of course, the college campuses. Harvard Palestine Solidarity Committee. I'm thinking that this group did not exist until the attacks on October 7th. I may be wrong, it's just a thought. 34 student groups signed a letter saying that they, get a load of this, hold the Israeli regime entirely responsible for all the unfolding violence. So, when Hamas breached that fence and they killed, those innocent people at the music festival, and then they went into Kibbutz Be'eri and Kfar Aza and killed and murdered everybody, Israel's responsible for that. Why? Because Israel is occupying their land, which I've already proven to you is not the case. Hunter College. The guy on the left is a Fox News correspondent, and he was talking to this girl. I don't know what she's wearing on her face. I keep thinking, I wish you had an intelligent answer, because the duckbill that you're wearing really doesn't do anything for you at all. But he's talking to her, and he said, "Why are you here protesting against Israel?" He said, "Don't you know that Hamas came in? They beheaded babies. I mean, doesn't that bother you?" Here's what she said. "No, that's false. No, that's actually false. Israel is notorious for creating propaganda so they can massacre Palestinians." I must wonder how she thinks that's false when the visual images and the footage that we have of the babies getting their heads cut off comes from the GoPro cameras that the Hamas terrorists themselves were wearing. We didn't have any. We weren't there yet. Next slide. Oh my gosh. Anybody see this? So after the Hamas attack, and I told you a number of these Hamas terrorists came over to Israel on paragliders, Black Lives Matter, the Chicago chapter, said, "We want to show our solidarity with Palestine, and so in order to do that, to let Palestine know that we're with you, we are going to put up a symbol of somebody coming to kill innocent people on a paraglider." Does nobody have a brain? After intense criticism, the chapter said, "Well, we sent out messages we aren't proud of." Okay, great. So now you're on the right side of things. No, we stand with Palestine and the people who will do what they must to live free. We're not getting through. Next slide here. Now, here's another protest going on. Let me tell you why I put this one up. I am the staff evangelist for an organization, listen, called Jewish Voice Ministries International. Unfortunately, our group has a similar sounding name to these guys who call themselves Jewish Voice for Peace. That's a great name. Who wouldn't want peace? Here's the problem. Their version of peace is basically them saying, "We don't bless Israel, and we think the Jews should get out." In fact, here's one of the protesters, anti-Zionist Jew for Palestinian liberation. You know what it means to be a Zionist? What it means to be a Zionist is you're a Jewish person who has a heart to have a home of your own. That's it. But these folks have made it into a bad term. She says, "This is a crisis. The Israeli government has declared a genocidal war on Palestinians in Gaza with no regard for the lives of civilians or Israeli hostages." Notice she doesn't criticize Hamas for taking people as human shields.